Guru Prem, thanks for sitting down with me here.
My pleasure, Joe.
So, we're at a recovery retreat with Tommy Rosen, who credits you with saving his life. So you're obviously very involved in understanding addiction, working with people that have had trauma. How would you describe what addiction is, and how does it manifest itself in people?
I mean, I could give you sort of the standard answer: when you're so dependent on a substance, a chemical, a process, or belief in order to hold your life together, that without it, it would become unmanageable or painful, disoriented, or self-destructive.
Who are you? What do you actually do?
Well, my name is Guru Prem Singh Khalsa. I'm a Sikh, and I guess the best way to introduce myself is to describe or define my name. Guru means dark to light, Prem means love, Singh means lion, and Khalsa means pure. So that is my identity, and if I can fulfill my identity, I will have succeeded in my destiny. So I'm just trying to become my name.
Right. Wow.
That's my aim in life, become my name.
How long have you been on this path?
40 years.
40 years. Wow. One thing I really wanted to talk to you about is there is a participant here who came up to me 2 days ago and said, I received the best relationship advice I've ever gotten from Guru Prem. And this is such an important topic for people that are in recovery, that are addicts. They can utilize relationships destructively. If they don't have a connection with themselves, they don't know how to have connections with other people. So I guess the question is, how does one do relationships when they're actively in addiction, when they're in recovery, when they're on the path? How does one do it?
Well, in relationships or chemical addictions, there's a similarity, okay? If you're recovering from some sort of chemical addiction, whether it be alcohol or, say, cocaine, marijuana, or whatever it is, and many of the others are chemical addictions too, whether it be the chemistry of gambling, the chemistry of sex addiction, chemistry of just being caught up in information. And so the advice I gave the 3 young ladies, and I said, look, it always has to be like this in a relationship. It begins with math. Math before chemistry, because any scientist is going to tell you you need to learn your math before you engage in the chemistry. And it's fascinating because people, one of the first things they want to do, they figure, well, I've stopped drinking, I've stopped drugs, and they want to go find the chemistry of their mate. And of course, that's almost always a sign of difficulty or possibly disaster. They want to have that feeling before they even think about whether this is possibly good for them. So I said, look, that's just so fraught with peril. You want to find chemistry first? How about, looking into their background? How about finding out about their bank account? How about finding out what their crazy is before you get in the chemistry involved? But that's so unlike our culture. We want to go, I need to find someone whose chemistry matches with mine. Well, you may find that, and in the process of that, because there's no math, you're going to use up a lifetime worth of chemistry in a few years, and there'll be nothing to hold this relationship together. So my feeling is, and it's something that is part of the yoga consciousness, you've got a certain amount of chemistry that you have to make last throughout the relationship. And you need some understanding about the nature of relationships before you go and just blow your wad in the first few years. And then what happens almost always is, I fell out of love. The chemistry is gone. And by this time you may be married with kids and a mortgage and all sorts of things. And then another generation grows up in this type of suffering.
Wow, that's actually pretty profound. So I'd like to go a little deeper on your explanation of what is chemistry, because my thought about it is some sort of alignment, some sort of feeling, some sort of clicking. And I've always loved the statement that your dents match the other person's dents. So if I'm in a dark place, I tend to be a magnet for people that have the same sort of crazy as I have. So how would you describe what this chemistry is?
And that's a rather elaborate description of the chemistry, and it may become so sexually charged that you can't imagine, spending a night in bed with anyone else that doesn't have that type of chemical, interaction. Mm-hmm. And that's the basis of your relationship. But guess what? You're still in addiction at that point. You've just found the latest drug. So here's my advice to men. For men, it's really only 3 components. Women have a lot more. So I'm not going to be pontificating as the expert with women as much as I can with men. And by the way, I do have some credentials on this. I've been married for 27 years. And I'll explain a little bit why that has worked so well for 27 years. I can't predict the next 27 years, but there's good indication that it'll probably go the distance. Okay. Now, women, if you're listening, pay attention, okay? And this is specifically for what a man needs to do to live happily ever after. Number one, he has to develop the spiritual integrity. So he's going to uphold the spiritual values of that family, okay? Whatever that is. The general, values. He can be truthful, he can be honest, he can be timely, he can be reverent, he can be thrifty. He's got a higher power that he bows to. That's kind of important. Okay, those are the spiritual values. And the women, when you're looking for a long-term relationship, she needs to be comfortable enough in serving whatever values he bows his head to. Okay? Two, in sort of the general sense, the man needs to feel that he can provide and protect for the environment. Okay? That doesn't mean that the woman won't work and possibly earn even more money, but it sort of has to be in his presence that he can provide and protect. Okay? Number one, the spiritual values of the family. Okay? Two, provide and protect. Now, in our case, okay, my wife's really good martial artist, so I have to say, honey, stay back, I'll protect the house. When in reality, if she gets a hold of a sword or a gun, it's all over. But I have to have it in my projection that I will make that sacrifice.
Right.
Even though she's far better at actually fulfilling the need of the time. Okay?
Yep.
I mean, again, even if she's earning more money, there's a sense that I will provide. And it can be things even more than money, but in sort of the classic sense. It might be, but it doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. And the third, this is where the chemistry comes in. He needs to be able to put a smile on the faces of his family. Mm. And that's on many levels, So that's, the papa of the family. And the great lover to his wife, okay? But there's other smiles. And the thing is about the whole lovemaking part, see where it is? It's moving in this order. That's actually number 3. Mm. So if you try to, go to the smile before you've got these other things in place, there's nothing for it to stand on.
Yeah, that's the house of cards that people tend to get into. Yeah, that's superb. How is there any rule of thumb that you adhere to when someone first gets into recovery and even aware that they're an addict? If they stop their drug, if they stop their behavior, be it a process addiction, be it alcohol or chemicals, is there a drying out period before you recommend? How long should someone? Because most people want to immediately jump into a relationship to ease the
that's
pain.
the last drug, and so that's you need to learn the blessing of celibacy for a bit, and really understand what it is, and really learn to enjoy it, without feeling I'm incomplete. I need to get that relationship. That's the last fix. I need to get laid, whatever that is. Because they feel incomplete, unfulfilled, itchy, etc. And by doing that, it'll really prepare you well for a relationship. You need to take that chemical itch out of your system, out of your psyche. Don't worry, it's going to be there when you reignite it. But you need to know that you can be complete without it.
You've written several books.
Yeah.
You're a master on alignment and the body and breathing. Where does one start? If someone is watching this and they are struggling with uncontrollable cravings, they feel helpless, they have a family member, what do you recommend that they do?
Well, I recommend they learn the downs. The downs, as in calm down, slow down, sit down, settle down, cool down, turn it down. Okay?
Yeah.
Once you're in the downs, now you're ready for the ups. You can then rise up, get up, straighten up, sober up. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few that I've used. But you can't do the ups until you have the down first, because you won't have a foundation in order to establish better roots into whatever. And almost everyone wants to just get up, fly up, let me get, but it's actually the other way. Open up the third eye, for example. No, shut it off, turn it down. Things got to be brought down. When Yogi Bhajan first came here, people were all third eye open from all the psychedelic drugs. His main effort was, let's turn this thing down and let's get you all jobs.
If someone's in a relationship that isn't working and they are doing the best they know how to do, but there's this misalignment, how does one consciously uncouple, I guess?
Well, before we talk about consciously uncoupling, I think we should just take a moment and talk about what conscious coupling actually involves. I've been married 27 years, but my commitment is not to my wife. Okay? So we're talking about, recovery. The commitment is to the higher power between us. It's something that we both bow to that's changeless. Obviously I'm not married to the same person. She's, replaced all of the cells in her body a number of times, and so have I. And we've both been through numerous changes, but there's something between us that's never changed. And that's what my commitment is to. Because if you make a commitment to the other person, you're locked into a moving target. And if that's the case, it's going to be incredibly difficult, and at least 50% of the time it will fail, because it's almost impossible to maintain a relationship with the other person for more than 14 years at the most. It's just, and then they just sort of get the tired relationship and they just keep going for the kids, or maybe they just, in some cases, they just have a giant vessel of chemistry. It's rare. Or they can just keep going. I do know a couple that's been together since they were 16 and 14, and they're now in their 60s. And everyone looks, oh my God, how do they do that? And it's that rare instance. They just had a giant vessel of chemistry. Now, for the rest of us, we have to parcel out our chemistry. We can't expect that's the case. And to do that, we've got to get very refined in how we dip into it. And so that's what I recommend, learning how to do that. And to do that, you got to have these downs in place so that you can get these ups in place. For a man's potency, it's not just rise up, but there's a whole sexual up too.
Right.
And so I've had talks with numerous men about my age, and every one of them, to say except with me, and I'm not bragging, is on some sort of erectile dysfunction medicine.
Yeah.
So I know what happened. They used up their chemistry. I know what happened.
Can one get it back after they've used up their chemistry?
Yes, but you'd have to go seriously into the downs and cultivate that. And you'd have to learn to sit, learn to relax, learn to do a lot, and change your diet. There's a lot of things you'd have to do. And so many of them are so set in their ways and their lives. You could do it, but it would be rare.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm not saying people should stop using their Viagra and their Cialis. I'm just suggesting that. I've seen this occur so many, many times.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, conscious uncoupling. What does one do when it's time to leave?
Okay. Get good guidance. Get good counseling. And then you have to be able to do it. You actually have to bow to the person and recognize that this relationship didn't serve its purpose. Now, I'm somewhat of an expert on that because I had an uncoupling before. After 7 years of what I would say was a very, very difficult marriage from the very beginning. And I kept at it because it was part of a karma cleansing circumstance. And that was an arranged marriage, and so was the one I'm in.
Wow.
They both were.
Wow.
And one I actually sensed, because they were both arranged by Yogi Bhajan, and I sensed that first one, which was so painful, was all about doing the hardest yoga set you could ever imagine. And then it was done, interestingly, there's kind of a long story, which is beyond this interview. But when it was done, I felt like I was really free. Like I'd been holding my arms up, in some posture for 7 years. And then he presented me with my wife. It was sort of an arranged marriage between my mother-in-law and Yogi Bhajan. And boy, this was like fortuitous. And I was very doubtful whether this could possibly. So through a supreme act of faith, I bowed my head thinking, this has to work. And it did. But the uncoupling, there's a conscious way to bless the person, let your resentments go, agree to the alimony. You know, that's just part of it. You have to, even that, you have to, it's kind of a medicine. You know, I've had to take medicines, you know, for certain things. I had a head injury a few years ago, and I had to take medicines that I just couldn't surrender to. But I took them with resentment, and then I learned to take them as prashad. And the same with, you know, in the uncoupling. When it comes to things like alimony, child support, that you have to learn, that's a big part of it. You have to learn to do that as a blessing. You cannot, you have to heal the resentment to the other person, because that just will, that'll make your future relationships toxic. That'll carry through. And that karma will just show right up again in some other form, but it's waiting for you.
Any words of advice for people that are in grief or struggling, that are challenged, that would offer them any encouragement or inspiration that they can do this?
I mean, without question, the advice I would give is don't be alone. If you've got a sponsor, talk with them. If you've got a therapist, talk with them. If you've got a guru, a God, a savior, anything inside you, don't be shy about prayer, and don't be shy about expressing that you're going through stuff. At the same time, you don't want to share your weakness with just anybody. So be, you know, smart and sensitive about what you share and with whom. But at the same time, you know, keeping stuff inside and being stoic and just charging through your suffering on your own is a real mistake. I mean, the beauty of the 12-step world is that it's an opportunity to upload your suffering.
Thank you, Guru Prem.
My pleasure, Joe.